An iconic piece of footwear and its origin story are in the spotlight. The Bata Shoe Museum is opening a new exhibit today, looking at the history of the cowboy boot. CTV's Jessica Smith joins us live with more. Jess.
It is such a cool exhibit, Michelle, and there's so much rich history, and there's a lot of Canadian connections. I'm joined by Elizabeth with the Bata Shoe Museum, and I have to point out before we get started, her boots, these are just Canadian and absolutely fantastic. But talk to me about where we're standing. This is obviously a big deal. You're celebrating 30 years, and this exhibit has got so much history, and there's such a story to it that maybe a lot of people don't know.
So we're in the exhibition, Rough and Ready, a history of the cowboy boot, and we're in the first section, which looks at the real history. Who was the cowboy? And so a lot of, at least another 10% were Indigenous, and also that when the cowboy boot first started, actually when cowboys first started, they just wore whatever boots they could get their hands on. But by the end of the 19th century, a cowboy boot starts to emerge, and that's what you have right here. So you can see that the heel's a little higher, and you can see that they start to use embroidery. Once the West is closed, then Hollywood transforms the cowboy.
You really do see that transformation, because we were talking about these original ones and how tight they were and how small they were, but they had a much different function to them. And then you think about, you know, the Canadian connection with Stampede and things like that. You have a section that's got a bit of a nod to Stampede.
Yeah, this section sort of looks at the theme of rodeo, you know, everything from rodeos to dude ranches to the Calgary Stampede. And so we have a pair from the 1920s. It came from the Glenbow, and it was worn by a woman in the Calgary Stampede Parade. And so there are lots of Canadian touch points here for sure.
And we have to talk about this kind of pop culture resurgence. We know fashion kind of goes in these cycles, and we've seen, you know, Lil Nas X, we've seen Beyonce really kind of bring this back into the kind of pop forefront. How important was that to include that into this collection? Because I feel like there's just such a story when it comes to pop and the cowboy boot.
Well, you know, even the idea of the singing cowboy, right? That goes all the way back to the 1930s when finally talkies were invented. And here, one of the things that we have on view are two boots actually worn by Gene Autry, the original singing cowboy. So when you think about Beyonce and you think about Lil Nas X and what they are doing, it's both a reclamation of the true history of who cowboys were, but it's also a reclamation of this musical tradition as well. They used cowboy costume in many ways to get their points across. And so the exhibition does end with some incredible boots.
So we're in the kind of opening days of this exhibit. How long is it going on for, and how long do people have to come and check out whether they want to see the classics or the pop version of the cowboy boot?
So the exhibition is actually up for 18 months. So we can accept a stampede of visitors right now, but also people do have a chance to see it for quite a while. So it will be up. And you can see, again, another Canadian touch point. We have Orville Peck's boots. So Orville Peck, right, Canadian rising star in the country music scene, and his boots were made by a woman. And so women have really moved into cowboy boot making, and we have a number of really incredible examples of some of these craftswomen who have taken over this tradition.
Well, Elizabeth, I am a fan of the cowboy boot. We're going to send things back inside to the station. I'll tip my imaginary hat. I left my cowboy hat at home. I have one, but I'll send it back inside to the station. Thank you.